Greetings and welcome to the Halloween edition of the Sliders Review. And I'm here today to talk to you about how Scooby-Doo has been relevant ever since the 1960s. And as of the year of this recording of this video, it is 2024. That is 7 decades. I don't think there's another creation that's been televised that's been around this stinking long, who has literally been in the spotlight for every decade since their creation. And no, I'm not talking about like for 70 years and stuff. I'm not saying that he's been on television every day for that. I mean, like he's had like a show or like a movie, during that time span, because his shows only last for around, anywhere between 3 to 5 seasons and stuff. This is truly impressive. And it's crazy how Scooby-Doo came to be, because everything was so different back then. Like from the name of the characters to their designs to Scooby-Doo's, what type of dog he's gonna be, and it's just nuts how like Scooby-Doo just came to be and everything. And the latest incarnation is gonna be an anime called Go Go Mystery Machine, where Scooby and Shaggy go on over to Japan and they unleash monsters. Scooby-Doo holds a very dear and special place in my heart. Who hasn't watched that dog and his group of friends like solve mysteries, dealing with monsters and ghosts, when they was a kid? And I swear to God, there's a bird outside my window and he just will not shut up. So if you hear me pause and just get like irritated, it's because of that. Stinking bird. Anyway. But yeah, he holds a dear and special place in my heart. I started watching him ever since like the 80s, starting with reruns. Because, of course, his show originally came out in 1969, and that was before my time. So in the 80s, I got to watch like the reruns. But then I was introduced to a pup named Scooby-Doo, and I love that series. That's probably my all-time favorite of all like Scooby-Doo media and everything. Next to that of the original, Where is Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And of course, Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, which was just amazing. Just amazing and stuff. And it's funny the conception of like Scooby-Doo, because it's just a group of humans who ride around in a van solving mysteries and stuff with a dog that can talk. And it's just the craziest thing, because it's like that should not work. But of course, it was the 1960s and things were very psychedelic back then. So I guess maybe some people assume that, hey, maybe there's some talking animals. All this stuff. It's just kind of like, it was just those times. And, Scooby-Doo has aged very well over time, except for some of the older stuff where it's just kind of like, that's kind of culturally inappropriate and everything. But it's very rare that that happens, In the voice cast, many of the actors are still voicing characters from Scooby-Doo today, like Frank Welker and stuff. He's been the most consistent voice of Fred for many years, and now the voice of Scooby-Doo. And of course, Casey Kasem was one of the longest running Shaggies and stuff until his passing. And then like Matthew Lillard took over for that. Grace DeLizzy, I can't say her name, DeLisley or something like that. She's been like, Daphne for so many years. And then there's been a couple of different Velmas over the years. Kate, what's her name? Makuchi. Yes, that's her real last name. She's been Velma for a long time. And then Mindy Cohen, I think her name was Velma for many years as well. And so they've been consistent on voicing these characters, and these characters have changed like over time with personalities and stuff, incorporating some of the older elements of their character personalities, as well as that of like from like the movies and stuff. And of course you can't forget about Scrappy-Doo. Some people love them, some people hate them. It's just like how it is, you know what I'm saying? And so, like, with Scooby-Doo, this all came about because the Archie cartoon series from the 1960s, when they added a musical element to their show, this is how Scooby-Doo came to be. So, Scooby-Doo was created in 1969. That's when the first, cartoon series ever came out. And Scooby-Doo was created by Joe Ruby and that of Ken Spears. They the one who created the very first series, Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? For the company of I can't talk. Hanna-Barbera. Oh, why can't I talk? For CBS. And Scooby-Doo has been on so many different networks, man. It's just like insane. Like it was on CBS from like 1969 to 1976. And then it was on ABC from 1976 to 1991. And then, it was on over the Kids WB in like the 2000s and stuff from 2002. And also a series in 2004, I believe. And then it went on over to that of Cartoon Network in the 2010s. And then, of course, around, what was it? It was a Cartoon Network from 2010s to 2021, I believe. And then it went on over to like Boomerang. And then, of course, HBO Max after that. And that's where it's been ever since. And, of course, David the Devil Zaslav keeps throwing away all his properties. He keeps branching them out to other places. Because even Netflix is going to make a live-action television series. Okay, correction. From Kids WB, it was from 2002 to 2008. And Cartoon Network from 2010 to 2018. And then, from like Boomerang and HBO Max from like 2019 onward and stuff. But yeah, it's crazy. It's been through like all these different networks. It's crazy how it's never been on Fox or never NBC. But the fact that Disney used to own it at one point in time. Like in CBS, man. And of course, when it came to WB, well, that's just basically CBS, 'cause that's like their child company right there. And and now it's on HBO Max, which, good Lord, that Velma, that Velma series. Oh God, it's atrocious. But back to the fifth greatest cartoon character of all time. That's how he's ranked in everything, Scooby-Doo. So, back in the 1960s, things were a little violent when it came to that of kids' cartoons. Things like Tom and Jerry, Looney Tunes, always shown cartoon characters trying to beat up or kill or blow up or whatever other cartoon characters. It got to the point where censors were kind of like, look, man, you gotta chill with this stuff because you're teaching young kids to be violent and everything, And that was a huge problem. So, at CBS, an executive by the name of Fred Silverman was tasked with coming out with some type of new thing to combat the violent stuff in other shows, And so inspired by the Archie show at that time, he gave a task to Hanna-Barbera to create look, man, we need a new successful show like your Archie show and everything. One where a bunch of kids are solving mysteries and they're in a band. And so they got the work, but decided to pass it along to that of Joe and Ken. So Joe and Ken, they started hammering out the stuff. And originally, Scooby-Doo was going to be called the House of Mystery. And Scooby-Doo himself was called Too Much. And so, they was trying to figure out, what the format should be like, who the kids should be, what the dog should look like, you know what I'm saying? And so they created the characters of Jeff, Mike, Kelly, Linda, and Linda's brother, WW. But then they decided, hey, you know what? This is too similar to that of Marmaduke and everything. So y'all need to retool it and stuff like that. So Japanese American artist, now I can't pronounce his first name, Iowo Takamoto. He is the one who designed Scooby-Doo and decided to make him a Great Dane and everything. He decided to give him a double chin and make him bow-legged and stuff, which was against the rules of making Scooby-Doo, because they assume double chins and bow-legged people are unattractive, but for whatever reason he just decided to do it. So after some more retooling here and there, Jeff later became Ronnie, but then he later became Fred. Linda became that of Velma, Kelly became that of Daphne, and WW became Shaggy. Mike just left the group. And Too Much, the dog name at that time, which I'm so glad they changed it. They were listening to one of Frank Sinatra's scats about how did that phrase go? Doobie doobie doo, something like that. So then they are like, hey, Scooby-Doo. And so he was renamed Scooby-Doo. But then there was more problems with the name of the show. They decided to call the show that of Who's So Scared? And so it's just spelled SS. So it's Who SS Scared. And so the president, not president, but I guess the person who was in charge, the president of CBS, Frank, no, not Frank. What was his name? What was that dude's name? Frank Staten. Yeah, his name is Frank. So Frank Staten, he's all like, nah, this is too scary. We worked this some more. So they reworked it some more. They, fiddled around with the designs and stuff like that. They took out the musical band component of the show, and then they just named it Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And there it was. One of the greatest cartoons ever, where it's just basically Scooby-Doo, Where Are You is just where Mystery Inc., the group of kids, Fred, Velma, Daphne, and Shaggy, along with Scooby-Doo, are just traveling along, and they end up in one part of town or maybe another city, and they are investigating mysteries and stuff, right? And so back in those days, there were no monsters or ghosts or nothing like that. But men would dress up as monsters to try to scare people, because they were mostly trying to they found some treasure or some money, or they wanted a building that cost a lot of money, or they wanted some type of artwork that cost a lot of money. So they wanted to scare people away. And so they will dress up as monsters, scare people, and so here comes Mystery Inc. And they will try to figure out what's going on, thinking the monsters are real. But then after some sleuthing and everything, Velma would deduct, that this is nothing more but a man in a costume, while Fred would come up with some type of trap to capture that of the person while Daphne, just being there, falling down, getting captured, stuff like that. Typical female stuff back then. And Shaggy and Scoopy, who are cowards, will basically just eat all day and mess up the plans and stuff and be scared and run away. And then they will capture the person, take off the mask, and they will get that famous line of like, I would have gotten away with it. It wasn't for you kids and your dog and everything. And then Scooby would just basically say Scooby-Dooby-Doo, and then it would end like that in every episode. And that was basically the format of every episode in the first season. By the second season, we actually got to see them go to high school and everything. And I think they might have named the high school to that of Coolsville High School, right? And because, we never saw them around with their parents. We just always saw these group of teenagers driving around at night in this spooky location trying to solve mysteries. And it's like, yo, why ain't you at home doing homework? Why aren't you in school? Where your parents at? But we never knew the name of their city until that of like the 80s and stuff with a pup named Scooby-Doo. And so that was just the format of the show until, it got canceled and stuff. Then in 1972, they came out with the new Scooby-Doo movies and stuff. And so after the Scooby-Doo movies that were about like an hour were over and stuff, they went on over to ABC. At some point in time, Fred Silverman became I think, the head of ABC, where he was able to have more control over the Scooby-Doo properties and stuff. This is when Scooby-Doo got a little too odd at times, a little too comedic. They had the Scooby-Doo show, and they also had like Scooby All-Star, like oh Lord, geez, I can't even say this. Okay. Laff-A-Lympics or something like that, which was kind of like a parody of like the Olympics. And he would sometimes be paired with that of like Dino Mutt. So then you would have like the Scooby-Doo and Dino Mutt like hour and stuff. And then later on, Scooby-Doo, Laff-A-Lympics or something like that, later became like Scooby-Doo All-Stars. And so that was just like a weird point in time. And they would have like a lot of famous people around that time. They would have other comic book characters, real life people, Don Knotts. You would have like the Harlem Globetrotters and everything. I can't talk right now. Trotters. And you have other like Hanna-Barbera. I can't say that either. What the world is wrong with me? Hanna-Barbera. That's it. Like I told you before, like I had that one thing where you can't pronounce R's. It's not really so much like an illness. It's not a disease. I call it an illness, but it's like I forgot what the name of it's called. But people have a hard time pronouncing words with an R in it. Debbie Ryan actually has that as well. But yeah, so it's like people who have this condition. I'll just say condition, not illness. People who have this condition, they have a hard time pronouncing anything with an R in it. It's like the biggest tongue twister and stuff. And so those shows really didn't like do it all that much, you know what I'm saying? And ratings were starting to like dip. And so then they decided to create a brand new character. One where people either love or they hate this dude. Scrappy-Doo. So in 79, they created the character of Scrappy-Doo. And it's basically Scooby and Scrappy goes to Hollywood where they're trying to convince people, hey, take us off Saturday mornings and put us like, prime time or stuff like that. Like we can do more. So eventually they created Scooby and Scrappy show. And that was from like 1979. This was around the time that Scooby started to walk upright instead of walking on all four paws. And he could just walk and run like a normal human being. And he started talking more and stuff. This was an interesting point because I remember thinking to myself, oh, Scooby can walk upright just like Scrappy and everything. I kind of like it when he does that, but then also it looks kind of scary, like he's a monster or something like that. But this became a huge problem and stuff. Scrappy had a very abrasive type personality. He was mean, he was rough, he always shouted the phrase puppy power. Let me at him, let me at him, I'll rough them up, I'll sock them and rock them and stuff like that. I used to love Scrappy-Doo. I know people hate him, but I don't care. Like, because I was a kid at that time, so I saw, oh, okay, here's a little kid puppy, and he's like this cool little character. He took no crap from nobody, and he was very, very tough. But people found him to be very annoying and everything. And so, but then a huge change came that pissed a lot of people off in the 80s. They decided to do like the Scrappy and Scooby Power Hour and stuff. And with that, they got rid of Velma, Daphne, and Fred. So now it was just Scooby, Shaggy, and Scrappy. And sometimes, this other dog, Melvin Dew or something like that. I can't remember his name. He was like a gray dog that looked like Scooby with a red hat. But I forgot his name. Also in the 80s when they had this new format and everything, they had real monsters to deal with. There was no longer people wearing costumes. And so like in it would be like three shorts, 3 7-minute shorts and everything, instead of like a regular 20-minute like episode. And so Scooby and Scrappy-Doo, like, that show they had and everything, they started to drop like the mystery element of it and started going more camp. This caused a huge problem. So they reintroduced Daphne around 83. And so now it'll be her and like Scooby, Scrappy, and Shaggy. And I think they work for like a newspaper company or something like that. I think this is also around the time that Shaggy changed his shirt. No longer was he wearing a green shirt and brown pants. Now he was wearing a red shirt and blue pants and stuff. Then in 1985, they created the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, where they had to travel around the world and capture these 13 ghosts. They also, I think Fred and Velma still wasn't in there, and then they started introducing new characters. Flim Flam and what is it? Vincent Van Gogh and everything. But of course, people still did not like that format. So then in 1988 came my favorite series. From 1988 to 1991 was a pup named Scooby-Doo. Around the 80s, Hanna-Barbera, I had to say it slow that time. A lot of his characters that were created for his shows started to get the child treatment and everything, where they was de-aged to that of kids. And so was Scooby-Doo in the game. So Scooby-Doo's a pup, and Mystery Inc. now called oh wait, what's they called? I know Mystery Inc. is short for Mystery Incorporated. But I think they was called something else. I can't remember. Oh, the Scooby-Doo Mystery Detective Agency. And so now they was kids. And so this is the show that created different personalities for the characters and stuff. It was fun and it was interesting seeing them in elementary, but they still dressed like they was in the 80s, which made no sense because they should have been dressing like they was in the 50s. Because if Scooby-Doo came out in like the 60s, 69, and they was teenagers in high school, then technically they should have been like, in like the 1950s or something like that and dressing that way, but they didn't. And so with these new personalities and stuff, you had Scooby and Shaggy acting exactly the way they always do, but they was way more comedic. They still ate food all the time, and like, they were still cowards and everything, and there was still Scooby snacks. But Scooby snacks will make Scooby act kind of different. When he'll eat it, he will turn into a rocket and shoot up into the air and then just levitate on down. And also, a pup named Scooby-Doo is where we find out the city in which they live, Coolsville and everything. And we got introduced to like different names. Shaggy's real name is Norbert, and Scooby's real name is Scoobert. And so, like, you had Daphne, who was more like a valley girl. She was vain, she was all about fashion, she didn't want to get like dirty and stuff like that. And it was revealed she is filthy rich. Fred was just kind of nuts in the show. He was all about conspiracy theories, believing in aliens, and always blaming a kid named Red Herring. He always assumed Red Herring was always up to all this stuff, but he never was. Because now they got rid of the monster and ghost element, and now it's back to people being in costumes. And this time it's just not men in costumes, but women. Now they did introduce two little ghosts, but they was just friendly little ghosts. And Velma, she was like the cutest little thing ever. She had these giant glasses. She will walk and you'll hear like this skippy type noise and everything. And she was very smart and she could pull out a giant computer out like her back. Also, the whole chase element that's always been apparent in Scooby-Doo media was amped up like by 100 to make it more sillier and goofier with really cool music and a dance number. They'll just start dancing for like no reason. It was just like the craziest thing for a kid to watch, but it was fun. You know what I'm saying? And then many years later, they introduced like a puppet movie that was a continuation of a pup named Scooby-Doo. I reviewed that. I love that movie, man. It reminds me so much of that. Like they nailed it in every way. But a pup named Scooby-Doo also introduced some parents and everything. We got to see Shaggy's parents and Scooby-Doo's parents. Not to mention, I think we might have saw Velma's, Daphne's as well. But we got to see Daphne's butler and Shaggy's little sister, which sometimes she pops in and sometimes she pops out depending on which decade she's in, but she's rarely ever seen. So after the 90s were over and that of like the 2000s were rolling in 2002, they decided to move on over to Kids WB with What's New Scooby-Doo. And What's New Scooby-Doo was basically Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? But with more updated technology, a color palette, because no more grimy, dirty, it's more bright. And also the clothes were different, except for Shaggy. For some reason, they just won't change Shaggy's clothes. I think there's something in the contract that states you just can't do it. You can tweak it, but you just can't change it. But everybody had more up-to-date clothes. Also, this was more piggybacking off of the live action movie that came out. So now some personalities are a bit different. You had Daphne, who now knows martial arts and everything. Now, what's odd about What's New Scooby-Doo is that online it says it came out on Kids WB. But for me, I remember seeing flipping through the channels, this being on Cartoon Network. Around the early 2000s, it was a weird time for Cartoon Network and Kids WB. They had some type of partnership around that time because I remember Teen Titans came out on Cartoon Network, but you could also watch it on Kids WB. The Powerpuff Girls came out on Cartoon Network, but you could also watch it on the Kids WB. So, I guess What's New Scooby-Doo was always the Kids WB show and everything. And it just aired reruns on Cartoon Network. Then when that series came to an end in 2006, they created Scooby and Shaggy Get a Clue. Or is it Shaggy and Scooby Get a Clue? One of those two. And I personally did not watch this series. I didn't watch actually none of the Kids WB Scooby-Doo shows. So I never saw What's New Scooby-Doo. I might watch it one day because I'm curious. But Get a Clue Scooby-Doo, just looked terrible. The animation finally changed to where it just was unrecognizable. They had these bizarre faces and eyes. This was the first time that Shaggy was voiced by somebody else other than Casey Kasem. He was now voiced by Scott Menville, who I actually like that voice actor. He was Robin in Teen Titans. He was like Zach from Where on Earth is Carmen Sandiego. And he actually did a pretty good impersonation. It just didn't work. Now, I actually have seen one episode only. And that's only because I own another Scooby-Doo DVD from another series. And for whatever reason, they added that episode. And so I watched it and I hate it. But I watched it only a few years ago. But I knew this show came out over 20 something years ago. I just never wanted to watch it because of the way it looked. The trailer looked terrible. The voices sounded terrible. And also, it's just Scooby and Shaggy. The rest of the gang isn't there, but they do appear in like one other episode and stuff. Needless to say, it just didn't last that long. It's just one of those things you kind of want to just forget about. Now, in that series, Shaggy inherited like a fortune. And so now him and Scooby are living up in the mansion, but they're still solving mysteries by themselves. It just don't work out. But Cartoon Network decided, hey, in the 2010s, since we're showing reruns of like this show, might as well create our own. And in came Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. Now, I never watched this when it was in production because I never knew about it. It wasn't until the Velma show came out and I was just so disgusted that I started flipping around HBO Max and found this television series. I decided to watch it and I loved it. In fact, I reviewed it and everything. And I own the second season on DVD. The first season is good, but I just like the second season better. This was very similar in terms of like a pup named Scooby-Doo, where they started to give the characters more personality. Not only did they give them more personality, but we got backstory into many of these characters, more depth into these characters, and more depth into that of Coolsville and everything. And it was a fascinating series that was actually pretty dark for a kid's show. If you love Scooby-Doo, trust me when I say you will love this series. It is just amazing because there's more to the kids just like, deciding to become a group. It was like destiny and everything because there were always groups of other teen like mystery solving people who had a talking animal, and there was always some type of curse. Like the town is literally cursed and everything, and they have to break that curse. In this show, we see Velma being very rude and snarky, and we see Daphne madly in love with Fred, but Fred loves making traps. Also, this is the series that introduced Shaggy and Velma as like a former couple and then later on a couple. But he likes being with Scooby too much, which makes Velma cranky. Seriously, you will be shocked and amazed at how good this series is. Then in 2014, you got Be Cool Scooby-Doo, which redesigned everybody to look more what most animation comedy shows are looking like today. I don't know much about this series. I think I might have watched one episode and I just wasn't into it. It just wasn't my thing. The clothes are kind of tweaked, but they're still the old-fashioned clothes that they used to wear. It's just not my thing, Then in 2019, they came out with Guess Who Scooby-Doo, which resembles the Where Are You Scooby-Doo designs and everything. And it's kind of like the All-Star series where every episode they will have like a guest appearance from somebody famous. I watched the first episode with Batman. which let's see, what was it? Mark Hamill was the Joker, and Batman was Kevin Conroy. And at that point in time, that was the last performance either one did as that, until, of course, the DC Crisis movie, where they gave their last performance ever before Kevin Conroy died, and Mark Hamill said, "I'm done with the Joker," like officially. He lost his best friend to cancer, being Kevin and everything, and he's just not going to do the voice no more. And so I never really watched the Guess Who Scooby-Doo thing. I just didn't care. Steve Urkel showed up in one episode, and it's just kind of like, I didn't care. I just wanted to watch the Batman episode. But that was on Boomerang and stuff. Then, like in 2023, dear God. Because Boomerang, they had the Guess Who Scooby-Doo, but then they later gave it to HBO Max when they acquired it. And in 2023, dear God, we got Velma. The worst Scooby-Doo incarnation I have ever seen. It is not created by Mindy Kaling. She just voices Velma, but her friend created the show. And it is atrocious. It is terrible. It is hard. It is bad. So far, it has 2 seasons. I don't know if it's going to get a third. The only reason why it only got a second season is because people hate watched it. This is the only incarnation, well, not the only incarnation, but it's the first animated incarnation to not have Scooby-Doo. Basically, Warner Brothers was kind of like, no, we can't have Scooby-Doo in this cartoon because it's more adult rated R. There's like nudity, cussing, all kinds of stuff, you know what I'm saying? But it's just the way the characters act. They just act very stupid, especially Velma, who has her night terrors and everything like that. And it's been a while since I watched it, so I blocked so much of it out. So I forget exactly how the personalities are. But it's just terrible. I know Daphne is like the queen bee of the school. Fred is kind of like an insecure incel of a man. And Shaggy makes references to like a certain herbal thing, but he doesn't actually do it. Now, this is the first animated series to actually race bend the characters, which was like a new thing, which pissed a lot of people off, but I welcome it because, Scooby-Doo's been around since like 70 years and they have always been white. So, Velma is of Indian descent, South Asian, because that's what Mindy is and stuff. Daphne is Asian because of the actress who plays her. What's his name? Fred is still a white guy, and Shaggy is black, voiced by a black actor. It is a terrible cartoon, but no, it is not terrible for diversity. It's just terrible. But for now, it's the only current Scooby-Doo-ish type show there is, and I hope to God it get canceled, but there's no word of it yet. Then in 2024, it was announced that Scooby-Doo is gonna get the anime treatment in Go-Go Mystery Machine, where Shaggy and Scooby, they head on over to Japan. And they unleash tons of ghoulish monsters and stuff. And so, like, Scooby-Doo has like an uncle over there, and I forget his name. I seriously forget his name. I can't even pronounce his name. I seriously can't even pronounce it. I'm not even gonna try. But this one is not gonna have Fred, Velma, and Daphne. Instead, it's gonna introduce 2 Asian characters in this little dog fox looking thing. And this is different. Like, I'm intrigued, but I don't know how much I'm gonna like it. I'm not the biggest anime fan, but when it comes out, I'll watch it. I think it's gonna be on Cartoon Network, I believe. So a really unique thing happened in 1997. During the Johnny Bravo show in season 1, the creator went to Hanna-Barbera and, to see if he could make like a Johnny Bravo Scooby-Doo crossover. And they approved. And this was something really weird and unique, but it worked at the same time, despite them being in different decades and stuff. And like, they used the old formats and the old panels and stuff to make like the Scooby-Doo game to try to make it authentic as possible and stuff. And it just worked well with Johnny being in the 90s and with Scooby-Doo being from like the 60s and stuff. And like, what's crazy about this crossover is that Scooby-Doo rarely crosses over with like anybody. You know what I'm saying? Normally they come over into his show. And I remember that time they had Scooby and Shaggy, like I said, in the Sabrina Teenage Witch show. But this was something really, really, really rare and really special. Now, one thing that was really strange about like Scooby and Shaggy is that they made a guest appearance in Sabrina the Teenage Witch. It was just so like odd and everything. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't know, and I found this out on YouTube, is that Casey Kasem almost quit playing Shaggy back, I think, in the early 2000s because they wanted him to do a Burger King commercial, as Shaggy and everything, and voice him. But Casey Kasem, may he rest in peace, is a vegetarian, and he basically was going to threaten, to quit and everything. But that's what Shaggy does. He eats meat. He eats food. Like, I don't get it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't understand why he would make such an ultimatum for them to like take that out and stuff. There's like this Blair Witch like parody on Cartoon Network of like the Scooby-Doo gang, and it's really cool. I talked about that before. Scooby-Doo has also got the movie treatment. There have been countless Scooby-Doo movies ever since the 80s. Theatrical movies, direct to DVD, direct to video, direct to streaming. Like there have been tons since like the 80s and stuff. And the ones in the 80s mostly dealt with, they ditched the whole human in disguise thing and went to monsters and ghosts and witches and stuff like that. They also introduced the Hex Girls. Then, let's see. So that lasted all the way from like the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s. But in 2002, they had their very first live action Scooby-Doo movie. I've reviewed that. It stars that of Matthew Lillard, Linda Cardellini, Sarah Michelle Gellar, and Freddie Prinze Jr. And it's a really fun, awesome movie, but it's more updated and stuff. There are references from theories that people had of the game back in the day. It's more brightly colored. It's more up to date, but they do wear their old costume designs, but then they're tweaked for a new modern age and everything. Of course, except for Shaggy, but he gets like long sleeves, I believe, or something like that. And it was actually a pretty fun movie. It was written by James Gunn. Then a couple of years later, they had another one called Monsters Unleashed that was supposed to be more similar to that of the formula of the older movies with the old monsters. But instead of people in disguise, they're actually monsters. And I reviewed that too. It's okay, it's alright, but it's not great. And it pretty much killed that version of the live action movies. Then Cartoon Network came out with 2 prequel movies to that of the first 2 live action movies. I reviewed both of those. The first one, Mystery Begins, was actually pretty cool and everything. The second one, not so much, but it's alright. And in fact, this was the first time Velma was actually played by a person of color. They never addressed her race, but the actress playing her is Asian. But then, in 2013, I believe it was, Ashley Tisdale and her sister Jennifer Tisdale decided to like, come out with like their own direct to DVD movie or direct to streaming. I can't remember which one. Where it's just titled Daphne and Velma. There's no other members of the group and there's no Scooby. And this is the first time that like Daphne was race bent to being half black and I believe half indigenous because of the actress playing her, Sarah Jeffries. I've never watched it, so I don't know what it's about. But then there was an animated movie in 2013 called Scooby-Doo Trick or Treat, or Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo, or something like that, where Velma is actually finally depicted as being a lesbian. And there's a reason for that, because now they've decided to make the character a lesbian. It's something they've been trying to do since the live action 2002 movie, but they decided to bail on that. But it's something that, the people who are in charge of Scooby-Doo have been wanting to do for the longest time because of a fan theory. I actually forgot when that Scoob movie came out, but it's supposed to be like an origin CGI movie of them being younger and everything. It didn't do too well. They tried to incorporate too much. There was supposed to be a sequel to it, but then David Zaslav saw like, you know what, screw it. I don't care how close to completion it is. And he just did it for like a tax write-off and crap like that. Then about a year and a half ago or so, the movie Scoob, which didn't do particularly all that well, but well enough to get a sequel, was going to have a holiday movie. It was near completion when David the Devil Zaslav decided he was going to cancel the movie and get a little tax write-off and stuff. I swear about that man has ruined the way we watch television. In the more modern days of like the 2010s and 2020s, there were more Scooby-Doo animated movies, and they even partnered with that of the WWE. And also they had a crossover with Batman Brave and the Bold cartoon series. But then there was like a fan film, but I think Indigo Film or something like that. It's Indie something. And it was made very well. And I mean very, very well. I think it was called Mystery Incorporated. I talked about it. There was supposed to be a sequel, but it seems like they don't have that much funding for it. And none of the stars are even allowed to talk about the project anymore. So most likely that's a one done thing. It sucks because there should have been more. It's a really good interpretation of Scooby-Doo. They've kept the older elements while infusing it with the newer elements. They've done like, they've done like it's like ghosts and monsters and stuff. They even introduced the Hex Girls. And it's like a mystery, kind of like a slasher type thing that went on at one point with one of the monsters and stuff. And it's very well written. Think of it like Riverdale meets Scooby-Doo, but a million times better than Riverdale. So it's like Riverdale meets the live action movies, meet the cartoon series, but done better than Riverdale. And so, yeah. When it comes to that of like, the characters, Fred is the blonde one. He's mostly, the leader of the group. He is very headstrong, very determined. He always wants to solve mysteries. When he was like younger in that pup named Scooby-Doo, he was more arrogant and stupid in the head. But then in Mystery Incorporated, they had him to be more into like wanting to make traps because he's one of the main people along with Velma who makes the traps to try to trap the people. And for the most part, he's always paired with that of Daphne and sometimes having a romantic interest in her in certain depictions. So Fred's catchphrase is, "Okay, gang, let's split up and look for clues." Daphne is the redhead, and she's normally just like a typical girl who always getting kidnapped, always falling down back in the older stuff. And she didn't really have no role other than just being the cute girl and everything. As time progressed, she started to become more headstrong. She's kinda sometimes like takes the initiative of trying to start the group herself, or like knowing martial arts because of Sarah Michelle Gellar, or having that of an arrogant Valley Girl personality, or a very loving, devoted personality being romantically linked to that of Fred. Daphne, for some bizarre reason, is the only person in the series who is never given a catchphrase, at least from that of like the original stuff and pretty much all the newer stuff. Like, it's really odd and strange. The only time she was ever really given a catchphrase was a pup named Scooby-Doo, when she would be like, "Oh, please," or like, "Oh, Fred Jones." Like, that was from like Mystery Incorporated, the animated series. Velma is the nerd of the group. She's the one doing all the scientific research and all this other stuff. And she, in the back in the day, she was always depicted as just being this unattractive, like nerdy girl with a big sweater, big glasses, and whatever that hairstyle was back in the day, having kind of like a brown auburn type of hairstyle. Since then, they have tried to, like, give her more of a personality. And pup named Scooby-Doo, she was just like the cute little kid and everything, with a little bit of aggression to her. She's been more aggressive in more recent incarnations, being grouchy, being stubborn, being angry at times. And other times they also tried to like pep up her like clothing style, trying to make her more like attractive and everything with the live action movies. But then, because of fan theories, people always assumed she was a lesbian only because of the way she dressed and the way her hairstyle was and her glasses. That's just how people in the 60s dressed. And so, like, because of that, they say that she might also be a lesbian because she's really strong to be able to pick up the entire group and run with them, because they say lesbians demonstrate levels of strength. So do men. I don't understand why they think a nerd is like a lesbian, but hey, whatever. And so finally in the 2000s, they decided, okay, we're gonna make her into a lesbian, but that wasn't gonna float with some people, so they decided to abandon it. So they keep trying to like bring it up in animation and other stuff, but around the 2010s and 2020s, they finally made it official that she is now a lesbian. Thelma's catchphrase is Jinkies. I love Jinkies. Jinkies is just funny. Shaggy and Scooby are basically like the same type of character. They're cowards, they're goofy, they're silly, they like to have fun, they love to eat no matter what it is. And they hate scary stuff. They are the ones who want to run in the opposite direction. Now, there was this one theory of Shaggy and Scooby doing something, which I'm not going to mention in case a kid might be watching, and that was parodied in the live action movie. Now, Scooby's catchphrase is just basically him saying his name, like Scooby-Dooby-Doo. And when it comes to that of like Shaggy, his is pretty much like Zoinks. I love Zoinks. It's just the craziest thing. It's crazy. Scooby-Doo's been around for 70 years on screen. He's had cartoon series, animated movies, live action movies. He's about to get a live action television show on Netflix. Don't know when that's ever coming out or if that's still even a thing. Plus, being Netflix, it's not gonna last. This stuff don't never last. He's been in comic books, he's been parodied. They tied him up to Johnny, they paired him up with Johnny Bravo and everything for Cartoon Network in those shorts. And just all kinds of other things. Like, they've had like a Blair Witch Johnny Bravo type. Well, no, they had a Johnny Bravo Scooby-Doo type parody. Scooby-Doo is just one of those properties that's just not gonna go away and hopefully never will, because they always reinterpret it for like a newer audience, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. That wasn't that spooky. Alright, well, I shall talk to y'all later. Bye.